College Football Enquirer with Ross Dellenger and Steven Godfrey. I am Andy Staples. Indiana, Ohio State. It's crazy the way the college football playoff works, the way the dynamics of this have changed everything, because this game has so little impact on anything else. But it does have impact, at least for me, guys. I don't know how you feel about how the playoff's going to go, because I want to see, what does Indiana look like against Ohio State? If this is a competitive game, then it's not going to be the Buckeye Invitational in the playoff. But based on what we've seen from Ohio State, that is my fear, that if Ohio State can crush Indiana like it did last year, I don't know that a lot of the other teams in the field have much chance against Ohio State either.
I think it's a very informative game. It's not a consequential game. I think that's how we should frame this. In other words, at very worst, the loser of this game, let's say it's a 3-score loss by either team. I don't see either team dropping out of the 4. Are we good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Agree.
So
I agree.
Understanding that, it matters tremendously, I think, for the teams below them who are hosting first-round games or who are going to be slotted into first-round games, is which team are you going to get on the way up? I also think this would then consequently affect the result of the SEC championship. So there are stakes here. But and also, hey, from a pure football standpoint, this is the best game of the day, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
So it's worth watching, because I want to see where Indiana is. Like, we know Indiana's better than they were last year. There's nobody saying Indiana got in because of their schedule. Everybody knows Indiana's awesome. We saw them go to Oregon and win. But what does that actually mean? Because I feel like Ohio State is kind of the lone representative of the old days, of what a national championship contender looked like in 2018. And what does this Indiana team look like against a team like that?
Yeah, that will be we've seen Ohio State not get challenged very much this year, right? I mean, if you think about like how the closest or tightness of games that they've had, I go back to maybe the season opener, right? Against Texas. And is that the last time that in a fourth quarter, maybe, that it was that they were in a tight game, a 1-score game? I mean, they ended up going to Ann Arbor and whipping them pretty good. Like, that was probably the last time that we saw that, is against a 9-3 Texas team that they were really challenged. And so for me, going into this game is, are they finally going to be challenged? And if they're not, then as Andy kind of mentioned, it sort of feels like if they win by 2 or 3 scores, it does sort of feel like we're going to be in the second straight Ohio State Invitational, that it's just all about the Buckeyes and can anybody really beat the Buckeyes? And so that's sort of what, I'm kind of like watching of can Ohio State be challenged, or when they're challenged in the fourth quarter on a neutral field? Like, how do they respond? What happens? Both receivers, I assume, will play. They played last week, didn't they?
They
Tate
did, and I think Tate was more hurt than Smith. But both of them caught touchdown passes. I think they'll both be effective.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah,
it was hard to tell. These games are not relevant. We kind of beat this into the ground already, I think, in the weeks leading up to this, because we could see the matchups coming. But I do think there's one interesting talking point left, which is, and maybe this would have factored more had Texas A&M made the SEC championship. We are getting bad schedules now because of the bloat in some of these conferences that are above 12, above 14, but we are, through no fault of the individual programs, seeing light schedules, and Andy, you can check me on this. I would say almost any criticism you could have levied last year from the South towards Indiana, you could also then levy against Texas A&M this year.
And it is being levied against them. It was being levied within the SEC during the conference season, and now being levied from outside the SEC after the conference season. And you're right. Like, Texas A&M is lucky it has the road win against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd be having different conversations about where they're seated and where they're ranked.
Yeah. So the Big Ten championship, while not consequential to knocking anyone out or placing anyone in, is a nice data point to have for 2 seasons in the Big Ten that were otherwise, I wouldn't say, almost effortless on Ohio State's part after week 1. But because of the Penn State implosion, I think that's a mutual opponent that looks very different based on the timing of the Penn State implosion. you don't have a quality matchup or data point for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Penn State was always this, and I don't think that they were with James Franklin. They lost to UCLA with James Franklin coaching them, and it's I'm not knocking James Franklin, who we'll probably talk about, with his Virginia Tech recruiting success, but this Penn State team was cursed. Like, it just was. So I don't think we should look at them any differently. But again, that's something the committee is going to have to decide for itself. So this game's going to be fun. The other game Saturday that I think, there's two other games Saturday that I think are going to have more impact on the college football playoff. The first is the Big 12 championship game. BYU, Texas Tech. This is a win and in situation for BYU. BYU is one spot below the cut line for an at-large spot. So they are not in the field at the moment. If they win, they are in because they'll be one of the 5 highest ranked conference champs. If they lose, I kind of think it depends on how they lose. Yeah. Because if they are if this game goes to overtime, if they play a classic and they go to overtime, I think they might still have a shot.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? I can't argue this because it gets down to such a semantic piece of nonsense with the committee's subjectivity. That's the nicest way we could say that. So rather than argue the theory, is this possible? Based on the way that Texas Tech played BYU last time?
That's the real question. That is the real question, because if we watched the first game, and all of us did, BYU could not score.
Yeah,
BYU could not move the ball at all. So they are going to, like, Aaron Roderick, their offensive coordinator, is going to have to come out just in his bag. Like, whatever he has been holding back, any sort of restraint that he might have had. And the thing about this is, if you do this, if you go this aggressive, you also run the risk of losing 56-12. Like, I'll give you an example. Remember when Alabama played Clemson in the national title game in Santa Clara?
Yeah.
The final score was something like 44-18. The game wasn't that far apart. It was Nick Saban understanding that to get back in it, he had to take a lot of risks.
Right.
And they did, and they all did not work.
I'm going through really quickly the drive chart from the first meeting. And when it's not brutal. When it's not 3 and outs, it is incremental gains to keep drives alive. There's no chunk. There's no explosion rate. There's no, I don't even need to go get our stats from Bill C. and Parker and all those guys. Like, it's BYU just struggling to stay alive versus having any efficiency downfield.
And BYU's defense was awesome in that game, by the way.
Yeah.
Held them to field goals, sacked Baron Morton a lot. It was a really good game for the BYU defense. They were that ineffective on offense.
That's the game where Morton has a lot of kind of weird decisions. He takes a couple sacks, I think, and kind of hangs onto the ball too long. Like, they were not explosive or dominant by any measure on the other side of the ball. But just in my mind's eye, from kind of the old eye test, there was never a moment where you thought BYU was going to put together an effective drive in the first 3 quarters, if I recall. That has they're going to have to do something wildly different. And I don't know if they have a comparable data point in their schedule. I guess Utah would be the only thing that would look like Texas Tech defensively. So I just think this might be the limit for this year's BYU.
And Utah is not as good as Texas Tech defensively. Where Utah has the concentration of NFL talent is on its offensive line. It's not Texas Tech's defense looks more like Georgia's defense, or more like Ohio State's defense, or more like Oregon's defense.
Because they're paying them, Paul. It's because they're paying them. A quick glance at the schedule, and there's just nothing close to Texas Tech, which is another conversation we could have in the offseason about Big 12 parity and dynamic. I mean, some of the teams that, the defenses that went Arizona, Iowa State. I mean, they put 41 on Iowa State. There's just nothing I can cough up here to replicate what they're going to have to do against a team that absolutely shut them down.
Yeah, and the Texas Tech front, especially the defensive front, I remember that game against Utah, right? Just wore them down, right? Eventually, probably late in the third quarter or so, it was just absolutely wore down both sides, right? The offensive line for Texas Tech and the defensive line just wore the other side down for Utah, and that didn't really happen as much in the BYU game against Utah. I think BYU had to come all the way back, right, to win that game. They were down big, and then they came back late to win the game at home. But Tech's that's the difference to me in Tech and everybody else in the league, and including BYU, is sort of their defensive front. And I'm sure I don't know what BYU can do different offensively, but they'll need to come up with something, because 60 yards rushing, which is what they had in the first go around, won't work.
Ross, I tossed out that Utah game because of the injury, because that's the Will Hammond game where it's 10-7 Tech in the fourth quarter.
Close. Yeah.
And then Will Hammond comes in and completely changes the dynamic of the game. So I don't know if that's comparable in terms of BYU, but yeah.
Well, we will find out. That one's going to be so much fun, because that's a pure win and in situation. Now, the SEC championship game, Alabama-Georgia, Alabama is also definitely in if they win. But I do think the committee put Alabama at number 9. They flip-flopped Alabama and Notre Dame. I think they put Alabama at number 9 because they probably aren't going to drop Alabama out of the playoff if they lose. Right. Because they've already beaten Georgia on the road. So I think they put them in a spot where they were protected by one team from the cut line for a reason.
I think that politically it is unlikely that you're going to see a Power 2 conference championship participant knocked out of the playoff unless you had some incredibly bizarre year, perhaps where a 4-loss team somehow managed to get to Atlanta or something like that.
You walked us right into what we need to talk about, though. The ACC championship game where Virginia, which is in a definite win-and-in situation. If Virginia wins, Virginia's going to be the number 11 seed in the playoff. Cut and dried, very easy. They are playing against Duke, 7-5 Duke. So I had Manny Diaz, the Duke coach, on my On 3 show yesterday. And Manny says, in no uncertain terms, the ACC champion will make the playoff. That is his declarative statement. He believes that if they win, they will have 8 wins that are all better than every single one of James Madison's wins.
Okay.
Well, you're right.
You can say anything into a microphone.
Yeah. But I guess I can't imagine him saying like, no, we shouldn't get in, right?
Right. He's not going to say that. Yeah. But it also is an interesting point to think about. And here's where the committee, if we can criticize the college football playoff, because we never do that, but if we can offer some constructive criticism for the people who run the college football playoff, the committee needs to rank, and Steven Godfrey mentioned this on the show the other night, the committee needs to rank down to 40, not down to 25.
Yeah.
Because it would be very instructive right now to know where Duke is relative to James Madison. James Madison is number 25. We didn't know where James Madison was until this week when they entered the ranking at 25. Is Duke 26 or is Duke 38? Because I think that would help us contextualize this.
I would take it a little bit of a step further. And maybe it's a situation just like this, but I also don't think it would hurt the committee. God knows how much attention and mind share we give them for them to have a little extra homework. On conference championship week, I think every participant needs to be ranked.
That's a great idea.
Just
put the conference
let me
USA
know.
ones. Like, where's conference
number
USA?
84.
Hey, by the way, this is not me being a college football hipster, but we brought this up on the last show, Andy. There's a situation where the Mountain West is not completely out of this thing. Unless they're completely out of this thing because we haven't been given the information that Boise and UNLV are in the 90s. We don't know.
We can be reasonably sure that Troy, if they beat James Madison, is not in. Like, there's a reason Troy's a 3-touchdown underdog in this game. So if they're not in, and if Duke wins, yes, where's UNLV and where's Boise State in relation to these? We actually do need to know this.
Yeah.
That would, by the way, that would only be if JMU lost. We're not, I'm not advocating for the Mountain West champion.
Right. Yeah. Troy would have to beat JMU at JMU, which is hard to see happening. But then again, who knows, right?
I would say that is the unlikeliest outcome of this conference championship weekend is Troy beating JMU.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree.
Yes. Yeah. I would say
but it would be fun to think about. And then to think about Duke winning, Troy winning, and then UNLV, winning. And UNLV been at 11-2, Dan Mullen and all that stuff. Like what happens there? And as you said, Andy, we don't know. This was a topic of the this past offseason of about the G5, or maybe it was last offseason. Everything kind of runs together with the CFP meetings in the offseason for me. But I think it was last year maybe. And there was a talk of extending the rankings and how they would pick the G5 that are out of the rankings. And it was just like, well, we'll just continue. I think they ended up deciding we'll just extend the rankings out to as far as we need to go with the first G5 school. That's what they plan to do this weekend, I guess, is just extend it as far as they need to go. But it would, go, if you're going to do shows and all this stuff that, 6 shows leading up or 5 shows leading up to the last one, then give us an idea of where you're
getting the free coffee.
You know what they need to do? Like our friend Chris Vanini at The Athletic, just rank them 1 through 136 every week.
Absolutely.
Miami, 7-5, Miami, Ohio, right? 111.
I would, but then also if we do that every week, Reese has to start at 133.
Yeah, countdown.
Okay. Yeah, we're just leaving countdown. 134 through 136 off.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, well,
there's 136.
Right.
Yeah, no,
what happened to Kent State?
The show would be really long. It would be a really long show. In a really
you just
long
have to do it in a very
meeting.
monotone way. Yeah, like you're announcing like a ticket at the deli or the dry cleaner or something. Yeah, I'm in there. God. By the way, Ross, call him by his full name. It's future Penn State head coach Dan Mullen. Okay.
Yes.
Hey,
by the end of this show, it might be because they're running out of options.
Or by the time the show gets published, there may be a Penn State coach. There's a reason we're really not hitting that hard because that's a fluid situation right now.
It might be Andy. It might be Ross.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one step closer to my dream of being a fired college football coach. It'd be awesome. Like I think I'd get fired within the first 2 games. I might get fired in the off season, like when it's clear I have no idea how to organize a football program.
Like Mike Price?
Well, I'm not going to strip clubs. Not a strip club.
No, isn't that the most famous hired, never coached a game situation?
Oh,
I wasn't implying anything about your conduct. I'm just saying that's the one where you sign the contract and you don't even see September 1st.
Yeah, our producer TJ says what contract or what buyout would I negotiate? Well, listen, I don't know right now if I'm hiring Jimmy Sexton or Clint Dowdle or Trace Armstrong, but it's going to be one of those guys. And I'm sure they're going to get me 70% of the remaining salary on the deal with a 6-year deal. So it's going to be amazing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I do think I can organize a football practice. So I can make it through spring practice. That should get me to the summer. I'm going to be awesome at media days. Let's be real. I've been in the room on the other side, so I know what people want. I will light up media days. I will talk of media days, and then we will open Penn State. Who's Penn State open against? They always have a terrible non-conference these days. So
it's like Monmouth or something.
Yeah, I will be such a terrible on-field coach that we will lose that game. So that's the problem. Is we'll lose that first game, and they won't fight. Oh, it's Marshall. Oh God, we're gonna get killed. So
they might be good. Yeah.
Not super cupcake,
But I'll say, listen, first game hiccups. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Next game's Temple in Philly. Casey Keeler would beat my ass. So I'd be fired immediately after that. I wouldn't make it to the Buffalo game.
Are you topping the Robbie Caldwell incident at Media Days? Could you talk about inseminating
no one
animals
will
with the
ever
turkey
top,
baster?
No one will ever top Robbie Caldwell talking about inseminating on the turkey farm,
right? Or turkeys.
Yeah, turkeys.
Yes, turkeys.
This is not a dirty joke, folks. This is college football history.
Yeah, he used a turkey baster not for its intended purposes, but to create more turkeys.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
he's doing the Lord's work if you think about it.
No, the Lord created a system where the turkeys do it themselves.
No, but we're eating too many turkeys. He's making sure we all eat turkeys, folks. That's all I'm saying. Wouldn't be implying anything else.
One more playoff related thing, because it will dovetail nicely into what we're going to talk about next. Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt quarterback, tweeted this week that Donald Trump needs to issue an executive order that there be a 16-team playoff. Now, if we look at where everybody's ranked, Vandy's number 14, which if there was a 16-team playoff, Vandy would be the last at large in. So that's probably where the number comes from.
Yeah.
We're going to do our Schoolhouse Rock next segment, Ross. Executive order can't actually make that happen right now, but it was funny. Yeah.
Don't give me ideas.
Speaking of DC,
good.
When we return, we're going to go to DC. And Ross Dellenger is going to fill us in on everything that's happening because the Congressional Minute probably will take about 20, but I'm still only going to give Ross a minute. I want to see how he squeezes all of this in. And then we may have to unpack it a little bit. But before that, if you'd like to see us, if you'd like to imagine Ross with no tie, because he's never wearing a tie on the show, imagine him getting walked out of the speaker's lobby because he has no tie. Sir, gentlemen must wear ties in this establishment.
Absolutely ridiculous. This is why we killed all the British. I'm still mad about this.
This is why Cornwallis surrendered to Yorktown, damn it.
Oh, man. I would have.
All right.
Oh, Ross.
So if you'd like to see that, Ross is definitely casual today.
No tie. No.
As he should be every day.
Never.
And if I were Speaker of the House, that would be the rule. Turn on your smart TV. Look at that home row. Find the Yahoo Sports Network. Click on that, and you can watch the College Football Enquirer and all the other amazing offerings from the Yahoo Sports Network on your television. And if you want to watch it on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop, any device, anytime, day or night, 24/7, 365, go to yahoosports.tv, and you can watch all of the glorious movements, every Steven Godfrey hair flip on the College Football Enquirer.
I'm trying, okay?
It's amazing. If I had hair like yours, I'd flip it all the time. Let's be real.
You want to talk about the Korean skincare regimen? Because that's a thing.
On our way to Capitol Hill when we come back. We are back at the College Football Enquirer, and it's time for everyone's favorite segment. Well, actually, before we do that, I do want to ask some people to Google something that you might have heard about in the last segment, because our producer, TJ, was not aware of this incident. Greatest thing that ever happened at a media days. I don't know what you want to call it.
Yeah.
But just Google Robbie Caldwell, Vanderbilt, SEC Media Day, Turkey. Those are the search terms. You'll understand. TJ was about to dump out of the segment because he didn't know where we were going with the idea of turkey insemination.
Censorship.
Yeah.
Flat out.
Google those things and you will understand.
We were reporting something that happened, okay? Because we're journalists. That's why we're talking about turkey basters.
Mm-hmm. And turkeys. But they're still alive.
God's plan.
Yeah. Okay. Now we go to D.C., where Ross Dellenger lives.
Where there's plenty of turkey basters. No, I'm sorry.
Oh, God. Here we go. This is how the turkey gets made in Washington. Sorry.
You did it.
I know, man. It's my fault. Ross Dellenger
save us,
is
Ross.
in Washington, D.C. He is going to save us. He's going to make this show much more respectable now. You were on Capitol Hill all day yesterday, and you came out with the greatest Ross's Congressional Minute of all time. Wait. Don't. Hold on.
Exhale first.
Yeah. Okay. Deep inhale. Big exhale. And then you'll be ready. Ross, the clock begins in 3, 2, 1.
After 6 years, $1 million spent on lobbying, Congress delayed for a second time in 3 months in the college sports bill, the SCORE Act. Well, Andy, let's stop there for a second. That's got me thinking. Not just about Congress, but other things going on in college sports. Number one, schools are refusing to sign the College Sports Commission's enforcement agreement. Number two, more than $220 million have been spent on buying out coaches. Number three, ADs are guaranteed more than $10 million in above-the-cap roster compensation, even though they're not supposed to. Number four, let's talk about the football calendar, signing day, the hiring cycle, the firing cycle, pre-portal tampering, playoffs, and bowl season all overlap. And oh, by the way, a coach left a playoff team. Other than that, things are going great. But back to Congress and the SCORE Act. Yours truly spent 6 hours in the U.S. Capitol on Wednesday, only for the House, scheduled to finally vote on the SCORE Act, to be pulled off the floor 5 minutes before debate was supposed to start on the actual bill. Why did they pull it? Because, of course, it didn't have the votes, and they might not have the votes anytime soon. Republican leaders don't think that the bill is dead, but they'll need to make true modifications for it to come back out of the grave.
I'd say you got that. This is sort of like delay of game, where you have to look down at your watch, look up at the clock, look down at the play clock again. So
I think you got the playoff.
Yeah, I think you did. A lot to unpack there. Can we also mention, Ross?
Yes.
That multiple conference commissioners were in D.C. yesterday to hold a victorious press conference when the SCORE Act passed the House.
This would be accurate. There was at least the 4 power conference commissioners were all in D.C. There was going to be a news conference. There was a fairly high level of confidence from Republican leaders, and right up until 30 minutes before the debate was supposed to start, that they were going to have the votes, probably a slim majority, but it was going to be like by 2 or 3 that they were going to have the votes. And then all of a sudden, poof, they didn't. And I'll explain sort of what happened leading up to it that caused their confidence to then be dashed. Well, number one, there's a vote separation of, I always get confused. It's a very small vote in the House as far as the difference between the number of Democrats and the number of Republicans. I think the Republicans have like a 5 vote edge, in the 5 or 6 vote edge in the House. So most Republicans seem to be on board with the SCORE Act. So the margin is about 5 or 6 votes, and they thought they were going to be over that margin by a couple. That was going to include a few Democrats, because there were going to be a few Republicans that weren't going to sign on, that weren't going to vote yes. So they needed a few Democrats.
Are they from states that don't have power conference schools?
Probably.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, that seems to be where the dividing line is.
Well, not all of them, I should say, because one of them is from Texas, but not all of them.
So they went to a non-power conference school in Texas.
They're going to lose. That's true. They were going to lose some Republicans, so they had to make that up by making sure they had some Democrats. But here's the thing: the Democrats aren't going to vote yes on this if they are needed for it to pass. Right, the Democrats aren't going to be the reason that they pass the bill.
We're not going to give you this thing we know you want because we don't like you.
That's exactly right. And so there was a Congressional Black Caucus meeting right up until the debate, where the NFLPA representatives were there. Athletes.org was there as well, spoke to them, basically urging none of the Congressional Black Caucus to vote in favor of this. Obviously, the Black Caucus is all Democratic. And I think when they emerged from that meeting with no Democrats, certainly none of our group is going to vote for this, and then you look at the detraction, from the Republicans, all of a sudden they weren't going to have the votes. And so boom, it got pulled, and here we are. They thought that it would come up today, but it was pretty clear now that this is not going to come up perhaps in the next few weeks. There's a chance it comes up next week, I guess, but we'll see. They have to make modifications. They're going to have to make modifications to this to get the number of Republicans on board that they need. And once they do that, then they will have Democrats get on board with it if they can pass it with a Republican majority.
Okay. Other than the ridiculous pettiness that you just described, I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions. What does this mean right now if I am a fan of a have in the Power 2, so Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, that kind of deal? What does this mean if I'm one of those hangers-on, like a Purdue or a South Carolina fan? And then what does this mean if I'm a fan of pretty much anybody else?
UM Monroe, yeah.
Go Warhawks.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about what the SCORE Act is, because a lot of people don't understand, right? And there's just 3 main parts. I try to dumb it down as much as I can. There's just 3 main parts of this thing. Number one, it deems college athletes as students and not employees. So it prohibits them from being employees. So, I mean, that's a consequential thing. I don't know how much that would impact the levels of college athletics that you're talking about, but, that's a big deal of college athletic employment. Number 2, it sets a standard nationally for NIL, right? Right now, there are the different state laws and things like that that operate in NIL. And that's, Godfrey, part of where there is an unfair advantage from state to state. I think we talked about it on this show before, or on the previous show, is that Missouri, for instance, had a really beneficial NIL state law and used that to their advantage at the University of Missouri for the last couple of years. So a federal state law would prevent sort of one school having some advantage by using their state law. But the number 3, the third thing that's part of the SCORE Act that is probably important to your question, is it grants the NCAA sort of a antitrust or legal protection to enforce all of these rules.
It rolls back all the progress athletes have made in the last 30 years and plunges them back into the dark ages where the schools can control
transfers,
how much they make, restrict transfers,
compensation.
They'd still let them make some money, but they wouldn't, because that bell's not going to be unrung. But they'd essentially have a get out of jail free card to operate as a cartel. And turns out, Congress isn't going to let you do that.
Well, I think
for now,
I break the antitrust exemption down into 3 ways. Like, the big thing is the restriction would probably return in player transferring, right? We see right now a somewhat unlimited transfer. Like, there would probably be some kind of rule that's enforceable. I mean, antitrust, this legal protection would protect the NCAA from enforcing all of its rules and not getting sued. And so transfer eligibility would be one, or transfer movement, and then capping compensation for athletes would be another. So, Godfrey, to get back all the way to your question here, in a way, the SCORE Act tries to level the playing field and arrive at a competitive equity, right? Would they legislate competitive equity by
can I say it in a different
capping
way?
compensation
The
and
SCORE
stopping
Act
the transfer?
turns the clock back 10 years and gives them antitrust protections that even the railroads don't have.
Yeah, true. But to Godfrey's question, it's going to...
It would essentially create the old
is,
system where just Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia were the only teams that had a chance to win the national title.
So then, real fast, why would someone like Cody Campbell be in favor of this?
Well, for a while he wasn't in favor, and I'm not so sure that he's in favor now necessarily, but fully on board now. But see, Andy, I have an argument against what you're saying in a way.
Okay.
So you're saying that if you gave the NCAA this protection to enforce rules. Yeah, right. Listen, so to stop the transferring, but mainly to cap the compensation as part of the House rev share, right? To enforce rules around the cap, thus preventing schools, big brands with big boosters from going over the cap. Their argument is that
which it wouldn't, because they were terrible at enforcing that in the first place.
Actually, it would level the playing field.
But it did.
Their argument.
They had those rules for decades, and nobody was suing, by the way, and they still couldn't do that. In fact,
there's always cheating, right? There's always going to be cheating.
In fact, there was less parity then than there is now.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with that.
So
I do.
It might be based on, I don't know, what's actually happened, that this system is actually better for creating competitive equity than the last one.
Their argument, it's a good point, but they, as in college executives, right? Their argument is that eventually, if you can't enforce any rules with the cap, and there's not going to be a cap, and the schools with the biggest boosters will eventually, like they did years ago.
You mean like Texas Tech?
Take the advantage.
This is where I was headed,
Texas Tech, which had no chance in the old system, and does have a chance in this system.
Well,
so we're going to plunge them back.
But that's the argument, is that there's going to be a new set of schools just with the biggest boosters that rule.
That already happened. That happened for the last 100 years. So, Andy, this is where I was headed, where it felt like Campbell's positioning has not gone full circle, but has definitely arced.
Well, here, I think I can translate the Cody part too.
Okay.
Cody got behind the SCORE Act because Cody knew the only way the SCORE Act was going to pass the Senate was if it was rewritten in a way probably that jived with what he would have liked. Ross, what was the bill introduced in the Senate?
The SAFE Act?
The SAFE Act. Yeah, that's
with
the one with the
Sports Broadcasting Act Amendment. Yeah.
Yep. So my guess is those two bills would have been, they would have had a nice date, had some drinks, and had a baby.
Yeah.
And that's what would have passed.
Yeah. And that's like, I think the goal is, in order to like have anything come out of the Senate that's going to be any consequential and be able to pass, you have to have something. We have to have a start. And the thought was that the SCORE Act was going to be the start for the Senate to take it and then do something sort of with it.
you had an interesting quote from a lawmaker, and I'm trying to remember, was it Lori Trahan?
Probably, yeah. Yesterday, yeah, it would have been her.
About why
the buyouts.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Can you explain what she said?
Yeah, let me get to that because I think I tweeted out some stuff, but it wasn't the full. It wasn't the full quote, and I can read the full quote from her. So I caught her in one of the hallways leading into the house floor. Sorry, I'm trying to find okay, I can't find the quote. But anyway, the main gist is that people have a hard time stomaching, is how she put it, the voting for a bill that is going to regulate and cap athlete, compensation when nothing's been done or addressed with the compensation with coaches in the buyouts, specifically the buyouts.
Ooh, there's my next question.
$28 million.
Yeah, there's my next question. Does the SCORE Act pertain or address or even acknowledge the existence of hundreds of millions of dollars of dead money and a completely open market for the coaches?
No.
Which is interesting because that's actually money the schools would like to save. Like, because let's be honest here, the reason they're doing it's power is the reason they want to do this, but also they can't control their own spending. Like, they can't control their own spending on players, so they need Congress to help them help themselves. They actually should ask Congress to help them help themselves on the coach thing. Again, it would be blatantly illegal unless you get a congressional bill passed that gives you an antitrust exemption. And that's the thing. Like, to cap coaches' salaries, to do anything that would change or allow you to restrict this requires an antitrust exemption. It is illegal to do it now, just like it is illegal to cap the players' compensation.
Now, they say, right, the House settlement provides them an injunctive relief, and like if you talk to the House plaintiff lawyers who represented the players, quote unquote, doing quotes there,
are
is
getting
that
paid because this thing is going for years.
They claim this is a collective bargaining agreement. So the players all agreed on this when really not all the players have agreed on this. Not even a majority of the players agreed on this.
How could you have a CBA and not have employees?
Yeah, that's a good question.
You can have a CBA with with non-full-time employees. The Screen Actors Guild.
Right.
Anyone?
There's some examples.
Writers Guild of America. Anyone?
Yeah, I'm in the WGA, but there's a big difference there.
Because of wrestling? Please say it. Because of wrestling.
No, because I'm a member of the WGA because I've written things.
Oh, he's written.
Whoa, hang on.
People who write wrestling storylines get into WGA. That's what I want to know.
We'll have that conversation off mic, so I don't, because I may have an NDA violation. I don't want to get into.
Okay,
that's a whole other man. You threw me for a loop. So Ross, but surely this wouldn't be occurring at the same time that a sitting governor railed against the dead money spending and coaching, and then turned around about a month and a half later and not only helped personally engineer another mega deal with another buyout for the coach that he replaced his fired coach with, he wouldn't also be guaranteeing $1 million plus bonus to the new coach if a team that he's not even coaching for wins a game in 2 weeks.
You'd be right. It is happening at the same time. Yes. Yes.
Is there ever a chance, Ross, that the people who run college sports, the commissioners, the athletic directors, will wake up one morning, drink their coffee, and go, maybe we should just try to solve our own problems? Yeah.
Do you think that do you think any of those guys ever just like looks in the mirror and, pardon my language, just is like, God, we're so full? Or do you really think, now this is an honest question, do you really think that they can push through a narrative that the money being spent and the frequency of player transfers are the root cause of the financial problem?
Well, I think what this all has taught us, now that we see unlimited spending on players, is that these people cannot control their spending because they are so used to spending someone else's money. I always bring this back to, like, I work for On3. It is a privately held company. We have a founder. Like, he makes very sure that we spend in a sensible way, because the less we spend, the more he keeps. Like,
sure,
public schools don't work that way. And so public school ADs are just used to spending. I mean, they may as well be Congress people. Like, they're used to spending other people's money. And I'm not getting political here. This is not tied to one party or another. This is just the way the world works.
Yeah.
Like, it is people who are used to spending other people's money tend to spend it liberally. People who are actually spending their own money because they're trying to turn a profit tend to be a little more discreet.
So, because of all the things I just reeled off in the Congressional Minute, but specifically two things, the latest failure of a congressional bill and the College Sports Commission's participation agreement failing, which we should talk about.
Let's talk about that too, Ross.
But because of those two things, right? So try to lay this out, and we can talk about the CSC agreement in a minute. So in order for the House case to really work without legal issues, in order for to cap compensation, to have enforcement and rules and regulations, there are basically two things, maybe three, that have to happen. You have to either have a congressional bill, you have to have or have everybody sign an agreement saying we're not going to sue over enforcement decisions, or three, you have to have a collective bargaining agreement. Like one of these three things has to happen. The first two are on the way to failure. No congressional bill, and not a lot of this, not enough of these schools are going to sign on for this College Sports Commission's enforcement agreement. So that leaves one. And an athletic director woke me up this morning. God bless the person. Thank you for calling me at 6 a.m. But with laying out all of this, saying it's time. It's never been more time. We have to do this now. And it's starting.
Please tell me this AD was on a treadmill or an elliptical machine at 6 a.m. That's what I want.
Walking desk.
It's starting to pick up more steam of we need to do something different. And I wrote about it back in July, quoted Danny White, the athletic director.
You had Danny White quotes, the Tennessee AD. Yeah.
Yes, and so it's starting to sort of get rolling a little more and more now that everybody is seeing these other two things have failed. And Andy, we could talk about the second thing, the CSC participation agreement.
Because, okay, so this is, I've been calling this the loyalty oath because I think it's more fun than calling it a participation agreement. But it was basically the CSC, College Sports Commission, which was the organization created by the House settlement to enforce this rev share cap. And they have an agreement, essentially, that they want every school to sign on to that says the schools can't sue because of adverse actions by the CSC. And what did I say when this started? The Tennessee Attorney General is going to get involved here.
Yep.
What happened yesterday?
Yeah.
The Tennessee Attorney General got involved.
Yeah. Along with 7 other states.
Right. Oh, he's a consensus builder, Jonathan Scrumetti.
Yeah. If you do the math, I think it's like over, a dozen, maybe over 20 power conference schools are in all these 8 states. Right. So as soon as Texas did it, that was it. It basically, you have to have all 68 schools sign on and agree they're going to do this. And clearly, that's not going to happen. So they're modifying that agreement in hopes of having it signed. They're modifying the college sports legislation in hopes of having it signed. The can continues to get kicked, basically, down the road. When, again, as this athletic director said to me this morning, it's time to collectively bargain in some way. It's not easy, and I wrote about it, that July 1 story with quoting Danny White. It's very complicated. You can't just push a button and collectively bargain, but it's time to explore this area in some significant way.
And Ross is exactly right, because I've said, hey, they need to do a CBA. It really is not that easy, because they essentially probably have to come up with a different mechanism to figure out where the money is coming from to the players if they're going to do a CBA, because there are various state laws that regulate bargaining with public university employees, that sort of thing. So there's a lot that would have to be done. It's not like Ross said, you just push a button. So I feel for them in a way.
This is the other part of this I wanted to acknowledge, which is we can poke fun at the greed of the managers of college sports currently and what they're trying to push through in the SCORE Act. But like that AD who called you this morning, Ross, and basically confesses or admits we got to do this another way. Like what Danny White's quote, you're talking about complicated or not push a button. I think that's a wild understatement, because the other moral stance at play here that is, to me, I don't know if it's more or less nefarious, but it's equally as counterproductive. So on one end, you have the current stakeholders who want it to go back to the way it was. I'm going to oversimplify this a little bit for our listeners. Like Andy's talking about, let's go back to 10 or 20 years ago so we can retain close to near total authority. The Saban era, what Nick pined for when he retired. Okay. Then conversely, when you have anyone who shakes free of this nonsense from an AD standpoint or a politician standpoint and says, we have got to call this spade a spade and start working on a financial solution that involves a CBA type structure and an employee type structure, you then have politically the opposite side of higher academia saying, absolutely not. This is a pox upon America. This is where you get school presidents pushing back. This is where you get a whole other side of politicians pushing back.
The faculty senate on every campus.
Absolutely. And I want to acknowledge this because I had an actual screaming match on the phone with an agent recently about this, because of course they're going to argue their side totally and implicitly. But when you get to a certain point, they kind of have a point. It's not just the greed of the, let's call it the booster commissioner AD Illuminati over here. It's that anytime someone who actually might have a shred of authority or ability or agency says we need to push forward and be progressive about this and acknowledge that this is a $1 billion industry and the labor force has to be compensated, but we have to regulate this in some way or it's going to break. Then you have the traditional academic side say, absolutely not. This is education. This is not athletics, and this is not a business. And that's why we end up with this mushy,
I tell you
feckless puddle.
If the Illuminati is on board with CBA, they're going to steamroll the faculty senate, because if the Illuminati and the players want a CBA, they're going to get a CBA. They'll find a way to get it done.
Potentially, yes. But to Danny's point, it's that this is not going to go easy quickly. And in the meantime, we could have an entire generation of high-level college athletics that look completely inconsistent and almost illogical in their construction and their logistics go from year to year for a while. In other words, you could be in for this for a decade.
I suspect in 2055, there will be some little asterisks next to the stats. And like this is the Wild Wild West period.
Yeah. You know, when you go back, I think Dave Rebson wrote this book about it was like a history book of college football.
Kickoff. It's so good.
Yeah. And
everybody who hasn't read it, get it for Christmas.
So Dave Rebson wrote about this, and he's I think he's still with the Big Ten Network. I really enjoyed it. I read it a long time ago. And the way I point this out mainly to boomer boosters, some of whom I'm related to, who could just absolutely wag the finger about kids getting NIL deals. And I said, you do know that like in college football history, you would have players follow the harvest and play for 4 and 5 college football teams in one season.
Yeah,
and
they
get
play
paid
for somebody on
it.
Friday and somebody on Sunday.
Yes. We are going to experience a modern version of that if these sides can't just acknowledge the reality and get something done. And I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So however you feel about Indiana or Ole Miss, it's not going away tomorrow. It's probably not going away this decade.
Well, it is going to be fascinating to watch where this goes, because I do think what happened yesterday in DC, Ross, might be a turning point type moment. That call you got this morning, I imagine there's a lot of people who woke up feeling that way. So, I woke up with a feeling this morning. When we come back, I've got a feeling we picked the games of championship weekend. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the College Football Enquirer. It is championship weekend, and it is time to pick some games. It is I've got a feeling.
You think football is still fun? I feel great, man. I got a bad feeling about this.
Gentlemen, let us give our expert predictions. Okay, maybe not so expert. Let us predict what we think might happen.
Our records are not good, Andy, for any kind of experts to be classified as any kind of experts. No.
Yeah. Steven Godfrey, please raise your half-calf soy latte coffee shop college football hipster.
It's British tea right now. It's
British
tea from England.
Tea.
Yeah,
of course.
Wow.
Yeah. This is also why Cornwallis surrendered to Yorktown.
Yeah.
What you got?
I killed him and took his tea. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I did this simply to just give some other corners of college football shine this year on this segment. I picked a lot of weird games and probably knowing that they weren't going to play out. And I almost wanted to insert Montana Yale into this segment. By the way, Montana's playing Yale in a playoff this weekend, and there is still good in this world because if we could just
the Ivy League champ is allowed to play in the FCS
yes,
playoff.
Sir.
Yeah.
And my friend Roger Sherman jokingly said, we're about to see something weird like Montana Yale. He said this like on social a couple weeks ago, and it actually happened. If we could just get the SWAC and the MEAC involved and still get and keep their revenue from the Celebration Bowl, we would have, I think, one of the greatest sporting events in the country would be the FCS playoffs. Yeah. Could you guys imagine like Florida A&M, Harvard, North Dakota State? Like,
I want to see the marching 100 in the Yale Bowl. Like,
yes, that's what I'm talking about. Now, unfortunately, I didn't do that. I just wanted to shout out to the MAC, which is slowly dying. That they have a championship game. It's on Friday. There has been a nice, let's call it linear progression, which is hard to do in that league for Western Michigan under Lance Taylor. If you, I'm trying to think where would we know Lance Taylor the most if we were a P2 head? Probably just, he's an assistant at Stanford. He was an assistant at Bama. Mm-hmm. He bounced around. His name was heavily in play for the UAB job. He's from that part of the country and he turned it down. He stayed at Western Michigan. So if there is such a thing as a program on the rise in the MAC, it might be the Western Michigan Broncos. And I could go for hours on the state of the MAC and what's gone on with the MAC. They're 2.5-point favorites in the MAC championship. So I guess I'm being contrarian here. I just wanted to shout out that the MAC still exists. I know that they're on hard times. By the way, it's an 8-4 Western Michigan and a 7-5 Miami of Ohio in the championship game. Those teams aren't winning their non-conference games anymore. And I don't know if they will be for a long time. And so you're going to see results like that in this conference championship game for a while. But I'm going to take the Broncos to win and to cover and to win the MAC for whatever that's worth anymore.
Ross Dellenger, what you
I'm going to go down south to where I just visited, actually, New Orleans. And Tulane is playing at home in the American Championship game and is a 2.5-point underdog. So this game is interesting for a bunch of reasons. One, it includes two coaches who are bound for other schools. Eric Morris from North Texas heading to Oklahoma State. John Summerall of Tulane heading to Florida. So this is one of them is coaching their last game at their school. Another one probably will coach in the playoffs. The winner will probably coach in the playoffs and still juggle their jobs at the P4. Yeah, a whole lot of juggling there. So Tulane, I was surprised that Tulane is underdog since they're hosting. So I would give me the green wave to cover the 2.5. John Summerall and them to cover the 2.5. Even though maybe it's a good argument that North Texas has played better this year and maybe the better overall team. I think that Tulane gets it done at home and actually wins.
This is kind of an irresistible force, immovable object situation. Yeah. So North Texas has averaged 47.8 points per game in American play. Tulane is the stingiest defense in terms of points per game in American play at 20.9. So it is something's got to give in this situation. I do think North Texas is going to be able to score some on Tulane. I don't think they're going to be able to hit their usual numbers. And it really comes down to whether Jake Retzlaff and the Tulane offense can put up some points, because there have been games where they have struggled to do that.
They have allowed less than 20 points in 5, I believe, if not 5 conference games this year. And they just got done blanking Charlotte. So this is dream estimator versus a good defense.
Yeah, I think I'm curious to see, because it may be a situation where Tulane can just out-athlete North Texas, which is what USF did. And I don't know. I'm not sure what the difference is in terms of roster talent. And we're going to find out on Friday night. For me, I'm going to Atlanta. And we should look at these records, our cumulative records for I've Got a Feeling.
Don't look at them.
This is why you should never listen to any of us. Yeah. We're all under 500 for the year. And it's not great. If you're watching on the Yahoo Sports Network, you're seeing how bad it is. But that's okay. I'm going to give it one more shot. One more shot. Georgia is a 2.5-point favorite over Alabama. I know Alabama beat Georgia on the road. Andy, what are you saying? This is a neutral site. It'll be easier for Alabama to win. Georgia had a freshman receiver drop a wide open touchdown pass in that first game. Georgia probably should have won that first game. I think Georgia has evolved into a better team. Now, one problem for the Bulldogs, starting center Drew Bobo went out in the Georgia Tech game with an injury that they are worried is going to keep him out maybe through the playoff, but he's definitely out for this game. He was out on the SEC availability report. So they've got a redshirt freshman named Malachi Tolliver who will be taking over. So hopefully for the Bulldogs' sake, having Malachi Tolliver taking snaps with the ones all week has made the offense move more smoothly than it did when he had to come in the middle of the Georgia Tech game. If it does, I got a feeling that Georgia avenges that loss and is the SEC champ again.
I wholeheartly agree, and I'm a little worried for the Bulldogs not on the field because I think they win this game, and I think that offense has fundamentally evolved over the course of the back half of this season. I can't even make Bobo jokes. Andy, you and I think we were at the Texas game. We saw a very, very different and dynamic QB run game. They're throwing on fourth. They're going all over the field. Good Lord, it looked modern. What concerns me is actually how much this game does matter to Kirby Smart and how much he does want to beat Alabama and win this conference championship. Because if you guys recall, one of the just slobber knockinest games I can recall in the last 5 years was last year's SEC championship. Mm-hmm. How healthy will Georgia be going into? But obviously, they're going to get a bye.
Yeah, there are stakes
here.
Georgia needs the win to get the bye.
Yes,
Alabama needs the win to ensure it's in.
It didn't seem that the buys didn't seem to help last year.
Yeah, I think I'd want the bye though, having to play this game.
Yeah.
The buys didn't. I don't know if we should evaluate the buys accordingly because the best team in college football last year couldn't score in the second half against Michigan. And
the format
screwed the whole dynamic.
Right? The seeding format was different, and so that is true. But man, you talk to coaches that did have the buys, and they were like, "Yeah, that sucked. We didn't like sitting for 3 weeks." But I guess we'll see how this one.
I think the luckiest teams in the playoff, Andy, are going to be the ones who get the. I love the G5. Get the potentially 2 G5 teams, or maybe
the 5 seed.
Virginia.
The 5 seed is the greatest spot.
Yeah,
the 5 is where Oregon is right now.
I think everyone should get the 5. I think you skip the conference championship game against the more physical and talented opponent. You rest at the end of the season. Then you go into a practice structure for the 19th and 20th. Then you get a decent amount of rest going into New Year's. That to me is the best calendar possible based on the coaching conversations I've had.
Mm-hmm.
So Oregon is sitting here going, please win Texas Tech. Please win Georgia.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they don't want to get pushed into the bye again.
Yeah.
Probably because I think they've just got the shivers, the shakes from what happened last year.
And these schools want to host a game too. Like some of these schools want to.
You want to have
the Texas Tech people. They really want a game in Lubbock. And
one of the dumber things
is if when they do this again, they should just kick the bowls out and play on campus.
Get rid of all the bowls.
Championship.
Get rid of all the bowls. Look, there are economies in these cities, and they really do. Like, there are people who are going to make rent or make a living. There's a lot of people like that, bartenders and Uber drivers and people who own hotels and stuff like that. So I think it's a really dumb punishment to put the 4 best, to take that away from the 4 best teams. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah.
But it's college football, so of course it makes no sense. That's why we love it so much. And we will be back on Sunday. We will know who's in the playoff. When next you hear us, we'll know who's in the playoff. We can break it down. We can debate it. Cannot wait. Enjoy the games, everybody. We'll talk to you on Sunday.